All right, everybody. Back at you with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic, and today's episode is on this reflection that's been rolling around in my head the last few days. The creator and the host of the show Hot Ones on YouTube that you might have seen, it's where they eat the hot wings that get progressively hotter and hotter with each wing, and he has a guest and they have a conversation over the spicy wings. He said in one of the episodes, the guest said, "How did you get into this?" And he said, "I was living in, I think it was Cleveland. I was living in Cleveland and I was bouncing from job to job. And I realized," he said, it was so interesting. He said, "I realized I started to get too into the local sports teams and had to check myself of, do I really want to live through other people's lives?" What an observation. We largely live in a society that's non-participatory. You sit down, you watch a movie of other people living out an adventure, get home from work, turn on TV, and you watch 5 friends in New York living life. You go to a concert and 4 people are playing up on stage, and maybe it's a symphony. 100 people playing up on stage, and you've got 500 people prim and proper in seats watching. It's a little bit more participatory when you have a couple hundred of them dancing. But in a symphony, that's the extreme. You're watching others perform, put themselves out there. Professional sports is a perfect example of this. In getting caught up in your local professional sports team, I can only interpret, imagine, maybe even project what that individual is saying of a recognition that he was getting too into the local sports teams. Their wins were his wins. Their losses were his losses. It's actually, they've shown that you will have raised testosterone after your local team or the team that you're cheering for wins a game. You'll biologically feel great. You will feel a benefit if they win. Yet, if they really win big, those players, they might get set up financially for the rest of their lives. You're watching them become masters at their craft. They're working each day to become a master, and they get really the lion's share of all the benefits, from the financial side of things all the way to all of the unbelievable benefits of becoming a master at any craft. A master of, and for many of them, they begin to master themselves, their minds, their approaches, the discipline. They get all of those benefits. When we live a largely non-participatory life where we are consumed with the lives of others, the ups and downs of others, the sad thing is we don't get to have experiments with truth. I often call startups experiments with truth. This is the title of Gandhi's autobiography, Experiments with Truth. And when you build a company, it could be a 2-person food truck, it could be a 200-person software company, but when you're building it from scratch, you have experiments with truth. You're wrong, you find out quite quickly how wrong you were. You feel the pain. You start to tap into reservoirs of resilience, of creativity, of fearlessness that you may have never known you had. You overcome challenge after challenge. You build confidence. You have all of these peripheral aspects, that this cascade of peripheral benefits that happen when you are in the arena, when you are challenging yourself. Could be the same for a stay-at-home parent. But when you are number 10 at a company, number 3010 at a company, when you clock in, clock out, when you watch others live lives, you don't get any experiments with those kinds of truths. You might feel safe or feel good about yourself saying, I wouldn't done that way. I would have changed this. My boss doesn't know anything. But you never get to put those theories to the test. Living in a non-participatory society means that most don't get daily, weekly, monthly feedback loops from truth, which ultimately leads to perhaps a mastery on the high end, but also a humility on the low end. Have you ever met or even heard of a humble sports fan? They exist, but they're certainly not what we think of when we think of a sports fan. A lot of identity and ego, perhaps superiority, self-worth tied up into the local sports team. At least that's what I think of when I think of a big sports fan. I love my Dallas Cowboys, don't get me wrong. Love watching the Cowboys. Swami at the ashram, he's a cricket player at 98 years old, loves watching cricket matches. But there's a difference between appreciating the game, appreciating the players, appreciating your team, appreciating the tension of a great matchup, and finding ourselves identifying with others living their lives. Identifying with others, whether it's the local sports team or whether it is politics. Identifying and inflating our identification with others that get the benefits of putting themselves out there. That get the aspects of mastery on one side, that get the benefits of humility on the other. And those are just two powerful aspects of the benefits of approaching life as right at the tip of the spear in these experiments with truth. And the host of this show is a perfect example of what's possible when we make that self-aware observation in ourselves that maybe we're getting too caught up in other people's lives, other people's experiments with truth. He had that observation, thought about, could see the end in the beginning. Did he want to be 65 years old, just living through the local sports teams' ups and downs instead of his own? And he made a switch that has taken him halfway across the country into a career path that I think he's been on for 10 years now instead of bouncing job to job. Certainly comes with financial windfall of creating something that many people watch. But more important than all of that is everything he has probably learned all along the way that he wouldn't have from the expensive or the cheap seats of watching others live their lives. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic, a philosophy that emphasizes when given the choice, act. Choose action. When given the choice, go towards the battle that your mind might be doing everything it can to give you excuses to avoid. To go towards action and towards life, because that's where truth lies. We'll see you next time.